Welcome to Amidon Planet. Good talk, real learning, better teaching. I'm Joel Amidon. Let's get started. Today on episode 139, we're continuing our work of exploring ideas and conversations that lead to real learning and better teaching with a conversation with Dr. Francis Su. That's right, Francis Su, who wrote the book Mathematics for Human Flourishing. This conversation is going to help us think more deeply about mathematics as something to help people grow as people, not just calculate answers. This is for me, a mind-shifting, truly changing my practice text. And I'm still contemplating it, excited to have this conversation and excited to share it with you. Before we dive in though, if you enjoy Amidon Planet, the best way to support this work is to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It just helps others find these conversations. You can also share the podcast, make a connection with somebody, a human connection with somebody, the humanity of it all. And like saying, I heard this, I thought of you, hey, take a listen. For example, I want to share this probably with my father-in-law, who I mentioned in the podcast, but I think would get a kick out of this book, but because I mentioned it to him already, but maybe he wants to hear from the author first. So you can also join the email list for updates, or you can send me a note at joel@amidonplanet.com with ideas, questions, or feedback. Frankly, I'm looking for feedback. I'm always trying to get better at doing this. We've got 139 episodes, but I still feel like I'm just learning how to do it. It's hard to edit these things because I'm like, you just need to ask the question. Anyway, want to get better. If you have feedback, I want to think about how to make the next episode even better so that it's easier to share with that colleague, with that friend, with that loved one. Thanks for being part of this gathering. Now, I'm excited. Let's get into today's conversation with Francis Su. Francis Su, welcome to Amidon Planet. How are you?
Good. It's nice to be with you.
This has been a highlight on the calendar for a while. I was telling somebody the other day that I was looking for a beach read because we go to the beach after New Year's. We've kind of been doing that since the pandemic, and I had this on my shelf, and I'm like, it's purple. Your book has a purple cover. It's kind of beautiful. And I'm like, you know what? Let's do it. Let's just try it. Maybe not the typical beach read that you would pick, but and I have to tell you, it was cold at the beach this year. It was really cold, but I was I was staying put, and I kept turning the pages, and it was just a delight. And even better delight is that invited you to come on the podcast to talk about your work and everything you do, and I'm just excited. So thank you for joining us
Thanks.
here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's funny. People often tell me that when they read the book, it's not what they expect. Like it's more like a series of meditations,
Yeah.
uh, rather than like a hardcore math read.
But there's some cool stuff. We'll get into it in a second. But I was sharing the brownie problem with somebody, and we were thinking about it. So it was it ended up being a great conversation to have about some math while we're again on vacation. So hey,
Yes.
before we dump too far into it, can you just share a little bit about yourself, kind of set the stage for who you are and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. So I am a mathematics professor at a small college in Southern California called Harvey Mudd College. It's a science and engineering school, so all our students are doing some version of science, mathematics, or engineering. And I've been teaching there for a number of years, and I like thinking about teaching. I like thinking about what mathematics is and what it's about, and popularizing it for people.
Yeah, awesome. Well, it's kind of funny because you have the job that a lot either friends or family mistakenly think that I teach math. I teach how to teach math, but I don't teach math. And so he's a math professor. I'm like, no, I'm not. You're a math professor, and but also too just kind of the differentiate between the roles and what you do. But then also too excited that you think so deeply about education that we'll get into a little bit. Can you tell the story of Mathematics for Human Flourishing? I know it goes further back than the book has, and actually found a link to the MAA recording, not MMA, that's a different recording, of your retiring speech as president of MMA, which I don't know if you've seen it, I'm sure you have, but it's someone just took it on their phone, and then that's the official recording on the MAA feed, which I thought was awesome that somebody captured it. So like whoever did that, kudos. But can you just give a little bit of background on like that message and then how that led into the work that we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, so in 2015 through 2017, I served as president of the Mathematical Association of America, which Joel is referring to as MMA. No, it's MAA.
Yeah.
And at the end of one's term as president, the president gives a speech at the national math meetings, and so it was my turn. I knew when I got elected that I would be giving some kind of speech, and I actually often people just give a math talk and talk about some bit of mathematics. And I actually thought that, given the way things are, and
Yeah.
a lot of the issues that have been bubbling to the surface around math and math education, and the nationwide kind of conversation around lots of big things, higher education, other things. I just thought might be a missed opportunity to not address why we're in this profession. Like
Yeah.
why do we teach mathematics, and why do students learn mathematics? What's the point? And so that's really what the talk was about, and that was given to a bunch of math educators. And uh, it's really a product of a long journey. Like my journey in math has been one of both triumph and disappointment. I have experienced some of the ways that people are pushed out of mathematics. And I'm somebody who's had a rather privileged existence and path through math. And so some of the point of the message of the speech, and then later the book, was to try to address some of the harmful ways that we practice mathematics, as well as to talk about some of the beauty and the wonder and the joy of doing mathematics. And so that's really how the speech, why what the frame for the speech was. But in terms of actually giving the speech, I centered it around human stories,
Yeah.
that would draw people in, and then that's really what I did with the book as well. I mean, the book is aimed at a larger audience than just math educators, but I knew that I would be speaking also to people who think of themselves as math educators and people who don't,
Yeah.
people who are afraid of mathematics as well as people who love it. And so different parts of the book speak to different audiences, I think, but it's really a message for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, this is a book, again, I would hand to a number of people. I want to hand it to my uh, secondary math method students when they graduate. I want to hand it to my father-in-law, who's a civil engineer and likes thinking about mathematics, like, or even to like those that maybe have had a harmed relationship. I want to hand it to them because like there's some beautiful stuff that's going on within there, and that you really did a great job in capturing it.
Yeah, thank you. I had the unusual experience that um, uh, that one of my so I at one point was seeing a therapist for some issues and
Mm-hmm.
things to work through, and it had been a few years after that the book came out, and so I got an email out of the blue one day from my therapist who said, normally I don't contact former clients, but I just had to tell you my book club, he's not a mathematician,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But my book club is reading your book, and I can't tell anybody in the group that I actually know you.
yeah, yeah,
It was
yeah,
like I was so touched. I was
yeah.
pleased. I mean, I was pleased also because, as you know, I'm pretty open, and I share
Oh, yeah,
some deep things, and some of the stuff that's like in the book was actually shaped by my experience working out some things with him. So anyways, it was funny to see that
yeah, yeah.
share from him.
Well, and also and I didn't mention this in my email, but my dad was in corrections for many years. He was a police officer, sheriff, but then he got his majority of his career was towards the end was in probation and parole. And so, like you talking to about you know, within the book is reflections from Christopher uh, about just his journey, his path with math, and I mean, you just brought up like recollections from myself, like my dad, like trying to like help you know help young men and young women like not let a mistake that happened in their life like get in the way of
Mm.
their education and trying to get sign folks up for ACTs and stuff. I remember that when I was a kid, and just I don't know the relationship that you had with Christopher, and that the fact that you're including that within the book, and that Christopher allowed allowed that the beautiful relationship that you all came up with like surface in the book was kind of amazing. I don't know if you could say a little bit more
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, so I guess for the listeners, the Christopher Jackson is a incarcerated man in a federal prison, and he landed in prison after a series of armed robberies as a teenager. Fell into the wrong crowd, got involved in a life of drugs, and it led to committing a couple of crimes. And he landed in prison, age 19, with a 32-year sentence. And so here's a teenager
Yeah.
who is going to be incarcerated until he's 50. And there's no parole in the federal system, so it's
Hmm.
it's not like there's a hope of getting out
Yeah.
uh, sooner unless there's some unusual thing that happens. And so I got a letter from him out of the blue, somebody I didn't know. Basically, and this was 2013 now, so it's been several years. Basically detailing his journey into mathematics, right? He started reading some books and worked his way up from, basic algebra textbook up through calculus, and uh, and he was now looking for help in furthering his education, his math education, looking for advice. And I have to say, when I got this letter, I was both touched and also a little bit surprised. And
Yeah.
like I'm a math educator. Of course, I believe math is for everybody. Like I believe that, but really Christopher challenged me to really dig deep and say, do you really believe math is for everybody? Why
Yeah.
why are you so surprised? Like here is a guy who is who society in some ways has counted out, who has forgotten, and he is finding something meaningful and interesting and beautiful around mathematics. And it's not about a career for him, right? Like he's most likely not going to end up using math, the math he's learning. He's doing it because there's something that attracts him to it that's intrinsically human, right?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
and he does it because he gets a sense of joy and freedom and wonder. He's expanding his mind even as his body is incarcerated. And anyways, it was um, a striking rebuke in some sense of my own thinking around mathematics. So we've had this long running correspondence, and some of that correspondence is uh, is detailed in the book.
Yeah, and it really makes some of these like I guess virtues and that come alive when you're
Yes.
referencing those. But yeah, it's just amazing. I was just thinking about the all the support and that I had going through some of the topics that he's talking about within, when I was at Wisconsin, and just thinking about trying to do that in a place and maybe having some, some correspondence with a math professor is good, but like it doesn't come as timely as when you're sitting around a table trying to struggle with
Yeah.
ideas and like again thinking about the freedom of like you said expanding his mind while at the same time the body's incarcerated. I think that's um, a way to think about it. But expanding also your idea about who is a doer of mathematics, and
Yes.
that's yeah, uh,
Yes. Yeah. I mean, part of it is that the challenge for me is shaping my imagination around what's possible,
yeah,
right? I think every teacher has this sacred duty, responsibility to see the potential in every student, right?
Yeah.
And what does that look like, and how do we shape our imaginations? How do we allow ourselves to have imaginations for our students that they may not have for themselves?
Well, that I'm gonna okay. So I'm gonna jump to the last chapter. I just had. Well, I guess before we do that, well, let's make a good conversation. Sure, let's just do it. Like the last chapter of the book, you talk about love, right? Um, and I think it just kept that when you had that an italicized statement, believe that you and every person in your life can flourish in mathematics, and I don't know. It seems like that was like crystallized there, and also too, that's something that drew me to your work is like, and I think I mentioned it in a previous email that my dissertation was on teaching mathematics as agape, or
Yeah.
like this idea of unconditional love. And you had a second. I'm sorry, I'm going to read a section of your book because I just think it was so good. Um, I say this to encourage us to nurture the potential in those who are easily forgotten, including ourselves. Don't the forgotten among us have just as much dignity as the one who is accomplished? Aren't they worthy of our attention? Can't we encourage the one who is at the start of his or her mathematical journey? Shouldn't we embrace the forgotten one who has not experienced the opportunities that others have had for flourishing in mathematics? Wouldn't it benefit us to learn from those persons most different from us, to honor their ideas, to have a posture of humility and not arrogance toward the experiences that they bring? This is unconditional love. And it's like, I don't know, struggling with the idea, well, what does this look like? And you're like capturing some of those things that, I mean, that's what really drew me. I'm like, I really got to talk to this guy. So like about these things. Cause I mean, I don't know, you just had a great way of putting it. And it felt like everything in the book was building towards that idea. And I don't know, when you were thinking about that, going back to the address, were you thinking about that from the beginning? Like, it is all about that, but how do I build towards it? I don't know. I'm just curious.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a great question. So the book is, as you know, it's the chapters are centered around basic human desires that all of us have, and part of the way I framed the speech as well as the book was just part of the way I thought about it in preparing was thinking about like what are some of the basic things that desires that all of us have. And if you think about the hobbies that you do, the things that you naturally gravitate to do,
Yeah.
um, they're all usually undergirded by some basic desire that thing meets, right? Like if I enjoy running, it might be because I enjoy the beauty of nature,
Yeah.
or it might be because I like the struggle of pushing myself and testing my limits, right? These are all basic human qualities and desires, and so I have chapters around, the desire for community, desire for beauty, truth, freedom, justice. And I decide, of course, the biggest one is love. Like that's the one that it makes sense to end with love.
Yeah.
And as a culmination of everything, in many ways, everything we do is in the good life is a manifestation of love. And
Hmm.
and so I'm not sure that in the speech I was purposely building, although I thought it meant to end with love.
Yeah.
I it meant it made sense. But with the book, as I was writing it, I think it became pretty clear, like this is the direction I want to take. Like ultimately, um, for a teacher to have the imagination to believe that every student can flourish is really an act of dignifying them, right? It's an
Hmm.
act of love. It's an act of saying, you are worthy, and everybody is worthy of having the experience of beauty and joy and wonder. And um, there's a lot of people who talk about like, oh, well, some people are, just naturally better at math, and
Yeah.
and not everybody can get a PhD in math. And my response is, well, no, not everybody should. It's not like
Yeah.
getting a PhD isn't the biggest thing in life, right?
Yeah.
Like, but part of what it means to be a human being is to have experiences that bring us something, that do something, and also cause us to think about our responsibilities to other people. And people learn at different rates. Like yeah. So I ended up getting a PhD in math, and there were times though that I felt like, gosh, like, am I ever going to do this? Like everybody else seems so smart, right?
Yeah.
Like we all have that experience, and it doesn't matter. I think the end doesn't matter as much as the experiences we have to get there. And that's really what I want for people. Yeah. People
Yeah.
learn at different rates, but it doesn't mean that people can't progress in mathematics. But yes, everybody can have meaningful experiences in mathematics, and love is really the driving force. If to see that in everybody, you have to love them.
So, and again, I'm maybe not as great of a podcast host as I should be, but just to back up a little bit. So, after you give this speech, does someone say like, "Oh, that's a book," or was it the plan to be a book? Or someone's like, "Francis, you got to, you got to write this. This is a book."
Yeah. No, it wasn't a plan. But afterwards, I got several publishers um, contacted me after hearing about the speech or seeing the blog I had posted up on my website, and so I got contacted, and uh, and then of course I'm like, can I really write a book? Like, is
Yeah,
anybody going to read this book?
that's right.
Is it really worth the effort? But yeah, no, I felt honored to have that opportunity.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, so we talk about these ideas of learning to practice. I'm always already always thinking about the purpose of Ammon on Planet is learning how to teach better, and like what are the things that I can gather out of here, out of um, out of what I'm looking at. And so like some key takeaways from the book to apply teaching. There's so many that's like kind of insurmountable. I was trying to think about like even what chapters to focus in on, and even just the idea of flourishing, um, and the I mean, you kind of touched on it, that everyone can be a doer, but also in that flourishing. Well, one, I just like that you defined what human flourishing is, but then within that section, you also talk about everyone being a teacher. Like, and I think that is an underlying like. I have a story I like to tell where I was a student teacher, and I happened to be a student teacher for my cousin's class. I don't think that was legal, but I was. So when so I was a student teacher under it, and like she would during the week she'd call me Mr. Amadon, then on the weekend she's like, "Bye, Joel. Have a good weekend." Like that sort of thing. But anyway, I'm having a parent teacher conference, and back across is my aunt, and like I remember her saying like, "Well, I'm just not a math person." I'm like, we're blood relatives. Like you're trying to argue one that that this is like a genetic passing down of what is math, but then also two at the same time thinking about what your point there, like what do you like? Everyone is a teacher. Like she was teaching, in that moment too, even though she wasn't taking on that role intentionally, but she was like teaching like that. That's that there's some doers, there's some that are, then some that aren't, and every time we're saying that, we're being a teacher. So like no
Yeah.
matter that possibility, I don't know, like that, you know,
Yeah. We're communicating attitudes around mathematics.
yeah,
We're communicating what our posture is, and young people around us are hearing that, right?
yeah.
And they're thinking, they're forming, in some sense, we're forming and shaping people's impressions by the things we say and do. Yeah, so we're all math teachers
Yeah.
in some sense.
So I guess here's just a question. As you go out into the world and interact and you tell people what you do and you get some of those reactions about, well, I'm not a math person, stuff like that. What just maybe even food for thought, and I'm just wondering how you respond in those some of those situations as well.
Yeah, every person is different and situation is different. So there's not a
Right.
blanket
Yeah.
a blanket answer I could give,
No
but I
prescription.
usually some of it is just a sense of where they're at, right? Like in some ways it doesn't seem effective to me when somebody says I'm not a math person to say,
Yeah.
"Oh, but you are,"
Yeah.
because they've already have some self identity,
Or wounds, right? Like wounds and harm that
and
happened in a
wounds.
math classroom. Yeah.
Yeah. So a single protest is not going to help them.
Yeah.
But my approach often is to think about helping them. see what's their humanness in some
Hmm.
sense, and then trying to point to bridges to mathematics. But I think every situation is different.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, what like when you talked about the exploration chapter, I think you had a great analogy about the basketball analogy where it's almost, and I like to think about it of having a relationship with mathematics, like establishing a relationship. And if you're trying to establish a relationship with basketball, and the only thing you ever do is practice free throws, like what kind of relationship have you actually established? Like it's a very small fraction of what the possibilities are for this thing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like so it's almost like have you have you had an experience with mathematics beyond? And I had an experience with teaching a kind of a more progressive curriculum when I first started in the classroom. It's called Core Plus, which basically you got a little bit of algebra, a little bit of geometry, a little bit of stats and probability, and a little bit of discrete in that first level of math, and then you'd build on from that and build on from, and everything was kind of connected a little bit too. So like you use the stats and probability to talk about some linear models and stuff like
This
that.
was in high school.
Yeah, high school, like
Uh,
freshman year of high school, and
mhm.
it was beautiful, and it was like you know, and some, obviously some parents like haven't had that experience and wonder like, hey, how come we're not just, foiling, factoring and expanding and simplifying and like, what, is this when we, is this useful? Are they going to be behind in college? And it was like, um, and just having that experience, like these kids are experiencing all these different corners of mathematics versus like it'd be like building a house and we're only going to build the algebra wall of the house
Right.
versus they're building a foundation across everything that is unique to that, and like wanting people to have that exposure. So like that analogy that you had for basketball, I thought was a pretty good one with regards to getting to know math. Like when you want people to understand like what math truly, like what math is beyond maybe the things with the experience. Like what are some things that you like? Is it like pointing to like some of the puzzles or things that you do, or some rich problems? Like I don't know. I mean, and again, I'm not trying to hey, here's one prescription, but just what are some
Yeah.
things that you get to see the beauty and some of the things you're
Yeah.
talking about with mathematics?
Yeah. So when I first started teaching, this was in grad school. I was teaching, introductory calculus. I used to worry that people would come through this class, which is probably the last math class that many of them ever
Yeah,
take,
yeah,
and think that math is just calculus. And of course, calculus is beautiful, and there's lots
yeah.
of reasons why it's beautiful. But I wanted to expose them to other things. So at the beginning of every class, I would start off with a 5-minute fun fact,
Mm,
which is just a beautiful idea from any area of mathematics, something that could be presented in less than 5 minutes, that would open people up to seeing that there's more to math than calculus.
yeah,
Uh, and um, so they're usually things I find enchanting. It might be a puzzle that when you look at it the right way, you see a way of solving it that's both suddenly eye-opening in some ways.
yeah,
Or it might be just a cool fact that people might appreciate. That's kind of neat. And there's lots of different ways to go at it. But if people want to see it, they can look at my website. If you Google math fun facts,
oh
you'll
nice,
probably find it.
yeah.
But that was my way of trying to show people other sides to that. And the interesting thing is that people stopped coming to my class late because they didn't want to miss the fun fact, right?
Hey,
Like they
there you
they
go.
knew it was a thing at the beginning of class, and that they often in evaluations pointed to that as something that they really appreciated.
Nice, nice, that's beautiful. um Anything that you would want to make sure that a math educator that's looking at this, that's thinking about how to teach better, that you'd want them to, maybe an extra
Yeah.
highlight or something in the book?
Yeah. Oh, well, this is not about the book per
Oh yeah, yeah,
se.
whatever.
I do talk about this a little bit, but like so I think it's really useful professional practice for every math teacher to assemble a set of things that you might use. You might be your own fun facts, right?
Mm,
You could use some of the ones from my website, but you know, in your own professional practice, like it's useful, and this will take time to gather enchanting things, right? Like every class, I feel, should have some kind of enchantment in it,
yeah,
right? Like, sure, you're going to need to teach a lot of things that are very basic and are skills based,
right.
but wouldn't it be great if every class session they saw something that they felt was enchanting, and it could be a cool application, it could be a little vignette about how math is being used in the world. It could be something, you know, a beautiful piece of math art. Like there should be, or it could be an exploratory problem on a problem set, right? Like
Yeah,
that's another thing I think about. Every homework, whatever it is, ought to have, you know, maybe there's lots of stuff that's just practicing skills, but there should be one problem, at least one problem that's exploratory,
yeah,
that asks them to just try some things out and see what they can come up with.
yeah. No, that's great. I teach elementary math methods, so teachers that going to teach elementary math, hopefully, and started using the math. Was it math games with bad drawings?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and
Yeah,
started
Ben
introduce.
Orland's book.
Yeah, try to introduce a couple of those to them, and because I was like, because during like COVID, I would do a little substitute teaching because they just small town, they just ran out of teachers, and so like I had a couple of those in my back pocket, and I'm like, you know, here's the kids that were, you know, towards the end of class and they just wanted to disengage. I'm like, I showed them that game, a couple of those games, and like that's all they wanted to do, and like the logical thinking that they're going through, and like I got them to do a lot more, you know, a lot more problem
Yes,
solving,
yes,
and they didn't
yes,
even know it, you know.
yes, yes. That's enchantment,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's there should be a piece of that in every class.
I like that, the idea of enchantment. What other things that you got in your bag there?
You mean in terms of
Yeah,
teaching
yeah,
things I
teaching
think
things that
about
you want to make
teaching?
sure that people people either take out of the book or even
Yeah.
the enchantment idea.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think one of the big ideas from the book, which, you know, again, the book was written for a broader audience than just teachers, so
Right.
I
Yeah, yeah.
didn't hone in on it as much as I would for a teacher audience. But is the idea that math isn't just a set of skills; it's actually a set of virtues,
Mm,
right? Like a skill would be something like learning how to factor or learning a formula, doing knowing your number facts.
yeah.
A virtue is a practice, a way of being in the world, a habit of mind, we often say. It's an attitude. And so, you know, a virtue might be something like persistence in problem solving. That's a virtue,
Yeah.
right? Another virtue that we hope is built by great math education is curiosity,
Mm,
or the courage to tackle difficult problems, right?
yeah.
These are all things that are hard. You know, often teachers focus on skills because, you know, they have to get through a list of standards. But we don't often so much talk about some of these things I like to call virtues.
Yeah.
And you know, in the Common Core, the or any version of standards that people have, there are the content standards, which are skills,
Right.
and there are practice standards, which are kind of getting at, but I don't think fully cover the breadth of virtues that I would want students to have.
Yeah.
But you know, like a great math experience should build an expectation of enchantment, right?
Yeah.
It should build in us uh, joy and wonder,
Yeah.
um, and we don't often think about that. So, you know, for a teacher, for a math teacher, I think paying attention to the virtues, the practices, the ways
Hmm.
of being, I think is really critical. And not only paying attention to it, but calling it out so that students see that you know that math is actually about these virtues or practices or attitudes.
Yeah.
And those are the things that are going to carry with you the rest of your life. So, you know, skills, you know, it's in the age of technology and AI,
Right.
skills are becoming less important. Now, and not to say you shouldn't learn them.
Right.
You should, because you're not going to be able to to advance pretty far if you don't know your number facts.
Yeah. Yeah.
But skills are not the heart of mathematics, right? The heart of mathematics is, being able to visualize, being able to define, to
Mhm.
abstract, to break a problem into pieces. Like these are all different ways of being mathematical.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage teachers to be thinking about that and communicating that to our students.
Yeah. And you talked about the we have a deep human desire for struggle too, and that's something that you know you talk about the math practices and make sense of problems and persevere in solving them is the number one of those practices, and like
Yes.
that entails, hey, the teachers, you got to put your students in a place where they have to do that, and so there's going to be struggle there.
Yeah.
And we used to have some presentation where we talk about celebrating the struggle, and like
Yeah.
that as something that not to, and maybe back in the when I was in class, like if I struggled, I'd be like, ooh, I want to hide that because that shows I'm not a doer, right? Versus like, no, that is the essence of doing, is
Yes.
struggle, and like having that, and like you know
Yes.
the loving place is to put kids in places where they will get an opportunity to struggle and productively struggle, right? And I just like the way that you put that, because I think it's almost counterintuitive until you start thinking about it, right?
Yeah. And people and we crave that. Like
Yeah.
we as human beings crave growing in certain ways, right? In different ways. Maybe it's improving your basketball game, or maybe it's uh, going on a really long hike. Like we enjoy pushing ourselves, and often we teach our kids from a young age to appreciate doing that physically, right?
Yeah.
And so, how as teachers can we also encourage our kids to push themselves mentally? And of course, putting appropriate challenges for students is a key part of that. Like
Yeah.
you can't like demoralize somebody and ask them to run a marathon uh,
Yeah.
if they haven't yet learned how to run short distances. And that's the same thing with math. But we do it with carrots, right? Like
Yeah.
the enchantment of discovering something that's kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
Like discover a cool pattern at the end of a problem. That's a joyful experience that kid will be like, oh, I like doing those kinds of problems, right?
Yeah.
You push through. It can't just be a bunch of plug and chug and ask me to be a human calculator, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's not that's not a joyful experience. It's not fun.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to do that. Um,
Well, and then combine that together with doing that with others, right? Like getting an opportunity, and like we struggled to do this. You talk about running a marathon and other things, like, but trying to do a difficult problem and figuring it out together with somebody else. Like, not
yes.
only have you grown closer to the content and understanding it better, but now you've grown closer to another human being through that
Yes.
effort, and like that's another beautiful thing, which is well,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Um, and again, I want to honor your time. I just wanted to ask, like, hey, when you put these ideas out there, you had the speech, and then you're synthesizing the ideas into a book. Like, was there some evolution in thinking, and or even like ideas about what you will do differently going forward, or what would you have done differently in the past after having thought about mathematics so deeply with regards to these virtues?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think the process of being forced to write down your thoughts is definitely a process of self reflection,
Yeah,
introspection, and so it certainly I certainly have been challenged in ways. I mean, certainly. So when I started with the speech, that was 2017. The book
hmm,
didn't come out till 2020. I was already on this journey of trying to change how I assess my students.
yeah,
Like if I say that virtues are important, but then I only test them on skills, then my students are getting a mixed message.
yeah, yeah,
And so one of the things that I've changed uh, uh, quite a bit over the last several years is asking my students to do formative reflection, right? So I would ask them not just to try to solve a bunch of problems, but also to, for instance, I might ask a question like, um, pick a problem that you struggled to solve and explain to me why the struggle itself was valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And, the whole point of asking a question like that is to show students that that's actually, that I actually value that. Like I like
Yeah.
value the idea that they are growing through that struggle and they get to think about it themselves.
Yeah.
And that kind of question is I accept any reasonable answer, and it's not a problem that they're going to be, you know, if they just answer the question, they get full points or
Yeah. Yeah.
close to full points. But it signals something different about the class, and I'm always reinforcing that also in my classes where I say, "Hey, let me just point out to you that in this class we're not just learning this particular these particular math ideas. We're also learning how to make an argument,
Yeah.
right? How to think." I also hope you appreciate the beauty of this, right? And
Yeah.
try to
Yeah.
explain, show people why calculus is a certain triumph of the human imagination, right? Like the
Yeah.
idea that you can cut things up into small pieces and then put them back together again and answer some really, applied questions is amazing.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Um,
Well, I just love that idea that like, hey, I've got these things out there, and I really now I got to make sure my practice aligns with it, or like, and knowing that
yes.
it's a constant evolution of that going on, and you can, and again, you've captured some of that in the book, and thanks for sharing
Yeah.
the formative assessment side of it. Uh,
Yeah.
so I asked this question, and I don't know, again, we kind of previewed it before, but what would be the major critique of this book? Is there a major, or like, what, I don't know, like,
It's the perfect book. No, I just no, no. I mean, yeah. I mean, I can anticipate a few objections
yeah,
from different corners
yeah,
of
yeah,
the educational landscape. I mean, I think there are some people who feel that maybe I didn't spend enough time. Although I do try to address the inequities that
yeah,
that face and the lack of access. And I didn't maybe I didn't like come out swinging with a lot of the underlying structural issues and part of that is just thinking about my audience
yeah,
and trying to address people that the general public.
yeah,
So I think there are some people who might think about it that way. I think there's some people who felt that I maybe had crossed some boundaries. That this may be a more traditionalist view that math is just the math, right? And
oh,
why would you even talk about all these other emotions
yeah.
or talk
Welcome to Math
about
Ed. Yeah, yeah.
talk
There you
about
go.
justice or talk
Yeah,
about inequities,
yeah,
right? And so I think some people probably felt that the book was maybe a little too personal in some sense,
mm,
right? I can see lots of critiques. Uh, and part of writing the book was also trying to think about all those audiences and how you speak to and potentially challenge those audiences, the different audiences that you might have, in a way that hopefully will still be received.
yeah. No, I think I was just gonna say like your openness to sharing your stories in there. I mean, again, we'd never talked before, but it was like, man, I feel like I know a little bit about your experience with mathematics and how there's some kind of resonate with some of it. And um, yeah, but I appreciate your willingness to answer that question. But I think this is, and I'll say it, this is on my like Mount Rushmore of math ed books when I'm talking about like if I wanted to somebody wanted to know like what I'm thinking about with math, I would there was so much in here that I was like nodding and lots of underlines. I got lots of like my little tabs in there and everything. The one that I would put it closest to right now is the other book that I would hand to somebody is Radical Equations by Bob Moses. Like those right now,
Oh,
those are on my, and I could, my other ones would be
uh,
Reading and Writing the World with Mathematics from Rico Gutstein, and then Teaching with Problems and the Problems of Teaching by Magna Lampert. That's my like letterbox four or Mount Rushmore, whatever you want to say, is like those are ones. So I just appreciate what you've put out into the world. It's like
thank you.
wonderful.
Thank you. It's good company to be in there. Thank you.
Yeah.
I-
So we're going to highly recommend it, and we'll put a link in the show notes for those that want to go get this book. So, but before we go, I'd like to ask a couple other questions for you. It's kind of things I'd like to ask of everybody. What is the best thing you have learned lately to help you teach better?
Yeah, I have been challenged over the last few years to think about how I do group work in
Hmm.
class.
Yeah.
And one of my colleagues, who's a math teacher educator, helped me see that like the when we put people in groups, we need to think carefully about giving them tasks that are what you might call group worthy,
Yeah.
worthy of the group that require participation by everybody. And so, um, giving people a problem that's very simple and easy to solve, it just means that some people are going to solve it and the others
Right.
are going to feel that they're not fast enough and they can't participate.
Yeah.
Not a good problem. But giving people a challenge that actually requires lots of people to input ideas uh, is a kind of group worthy activity. That's, I think, better. And then coaching them. So, for instance, I'm very explicit now when I put people in groups to say, "Hey, think about this problem." And I know some of you may feel like you know the answer. And what I don't want you to do is to spoil the joy for everyone else.
Yeah.
So I'll explicitly say that. So I'll
Yeah.
say before you get into a general discussion, start off where each person offers one observation
Mm.
about this problem.
Yeah.
Don't unfold the whole picture. Just say one observation something you notice. Uh, and um, and everybody go around and do that before you get into a general discussion.
Yeah.
And so I this is a relatively recent practice change of mine because of this because of the encouragement of my colleague to think about how we form groups and how we
Yeah.
coach the groups to have better interactions and
Nice.
the kinds of problems, group worthy problems that we might give them.
Yeah. I'm just looking at my copy of Designing Group Work by Cohen. That it's probably was handed to you maybe by that colleague possibly, because that's all about the group worthy tasks and thinking about how do you do that, how do you make it so there's interdependence happening, and then also that like goes back to what you're talking about, like it's hard to do like a formative assessment of your own process if it's just like, well, Earl said 22 and we're done, versus like, no, how do we,
Yes.
it's the journey is part of the fun here about how do we do that together.
Yes.
um what Okay, this is again one of my midlife crises was buying a record player, and then I got stuck buying, get into collecting Blu-ray, so and then obviously like paper books. So what is one piece of physical media that you love to listen to, watch, read, recommend to somebody? What's something that's out there for you?
Oh, but it has to be physical.
It has to be well. That would be great if it was, but I'm throwing this at you right now, so it's okay.
Yeah. You mean like a particular thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, if there was like even like an I always think about an album where it was like, hey, cover to cover, listen from side A to side B on a tape back in the day, or
Oh, yeah.
or or an 8 track, depending on your age, like or a book that I mean, like I just talked about Jurassic Park, like
Yeah.
we had ice storms here and everything was down,
Yeah.
and I'm like, it was cold and dark at night for a long time, and I'm like, I'm gonna read Jurassic Park in my sleeping bag while I'm trying to stay warm, and it was like that was a good experience, like with my little headlamp, and so I'd recommend that to somebody that like wants to get a good story with a little bit of math, with a little bit of chaos there, right? Like it was great to engage. And then hey, there's dinosaurs. Who doesn't like that? So like something like that for you.
Yeah, let's see. So one book that I really like, and this is maybe a more of a thoughtful, cerebral, bring to the beach
Yeah, yeah.
book, is a book by Zena Hitz called Lost in Thought: The Hidden Pleasures of the Intellectual Life.
Mm,
And in that book, she sort of makes a case for learning for its own sake rather than just because you need it for a job. So
yeah,
there's a lot of resonance with the message I have in math, but
yeah.
it's a book written more broadly, and it's a very reflective book. So that's one that I have quite appreciated.
Perfect. Thank you. Um, Anything else that? Well, one more thing before I'd be remiss to say like I'm doing a an episode in the future on uh, it's a barn quilt ethno modeling task, which I was reading about it today because we talked about barn quilts and like uh, on a episode of the Teaching Math Teaching podcast, and like City Sony like designed a task and then used it in one of her colleagues' classroom, and she talked about like kids who were designing their own quilts and they're playing with the two-dimensional polygon shapes in order to create their own quilts and like playing, right? And like she quotes in that article that in publishing the task, she quotes your book on like
Oh,
giving kids this opportunity to play and like represent themselves within this quilt, like they do in barns in the Midwest. So I wanted to make sure to mention that, and also someone from Maryland, Dana from Maryland, she has put a math for human flourishing in one of her courses and has been willing to share some of the materials that she did in order
mm.
to sort of integrate it into one of her courses. And we're going to share that in our notes too. So I don't know,
Oh,
just
nice.
as I've been sharing that, like reading and having you on, like people like it been coming out of the woodwork, like all these different references to your work. Again, thank you for being willing to share your time and everything. But do you anything else promote or share? We're going to put a lot of these things in the show notes.
Oh,
Your
yeah, yeah,
math
yeah.
fun
Well,
facts, website, everything else.
some people who like the book might be interested in knowing that I'm collaborating with a teacher to make a middle school or a young person's version of the Flourishing book.
Oh, nice,
So it's a
beautiful,
graphic novel, and it will be out hopefully later this year. It
sweet.
might take a little while. We have an illustrator. It might take a little while. So if
Yeah,
not
yeah.
the end of this year, it'll be early next year.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great.
And it's aimed, it's got, some cool. It's it's more visual
Yeah,
and
yeah, absolutely.
than heady. Yeah.
That's cool. And I get just again appreciate your willingness to I don't know like take that opportunity of the stage to put out your ideas when you originally did the speech, and then also to respond to the call to put this into a book, because I think a lot of people are getting value out of it again beyond just those that like math for human flourishing. They're going to pick it up and or get recommended to them, and they're going to gain some value out of it. I appreciate you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
There's my conversation with Francis Sue. So grateful that for his time and expertise, and just again for putting this book out into the world. Mentioned it over and over in the episode, but still, I am grateful. Now onto the mailbag. I just want to highlight mentioned in the episode that Dana from Maryland shared her slides from a talk she gave at the annual conference of the Association of Mathematics Teacher Educators a few years ago that showed how she incorporated mathematics for human flourishing into her teaching of math teachers. You can find those slides in the show notes at amazonplanet.com/episode 139. Again, appreciative of Dana for reaching out and appreciative of her being willing to share that resource. And again, if you're looking for ways to engage, just send me a note at joel@amazonplanet.com. Questions, comments, feedback. I want to get better. If you rate this episode a 5, help me get to a 10. Okay, give me some coaching. Appreciate it. All right, now it's time for the physical media of the episode, the part of the show where I share an album, a movie, or a book I've been listening to, watching, or reading. It's my small way of connecting with you. And if I'm being honest, it's probably my excuse to celebrate physical media or buy physical media, the kind that pulls you off the interwebs for a bit and helps you be just a bit more present. I just got done watching Fargo. What a fantastic movie. I saw it when I was a teenager. One of those, again, eye-opening movies, kind of like with Swingers before, was eye-opening where it's like, oh, I didn't know something could be this sad, funny, violent, and set in my backyard. And when I say backyard, I'm not from Fargo, but I'm from Altoona, Wisconsin, which is east of the settings of Fargo, Brainerd, Minnesota, and Minneapolis. And seeing people talk the way that I heard people talk. Now, Fargo has people turned up to 11. But yeah, I mean, I knew a bunch of 7s, and maybe there's some people in my families that might have been raging on 9. Hey there, oh, geez, you betcha. Oh, don't you know? And I mean, even the vision of Paul Bunyan, as you go into Brainerd, Minnesota, there's this, this kind of, almost scary looking statue of Paul Bunyan as you enter into the city that they keep, showing video of as in the movie. Well, in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, there was a Paul Bunyan logging camp that we would go to for field trips and things. You'd have your picture taken by Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox because Eau Claire was a big logging town. It had, the river, and you'd put logs in, go down. So, I mean, Paul Bunyan was one of the tall tales that we learned about. But just in the movie, hearing people, the cadence and the way that people talked or told stories and things like that. Oh, he said this, and yeah, and then back and forth. And there's a guy telling a story to sheriff's deputy in his driveway, and like hearing that story being told. And I mean, it was about a guy going crazy out at the lake, and then just hearing that, it was like I've heard people tell stories that sounded just like that. And just having like a Sherlock Holmes character of, Margie, Frances McDormand's character, set in Brainerd, Minnesota, and seeing how she's deducing it, like the brilliance and expertise that she's going through to figure out what caused all of this violence to happen in her neck of the woods, and having people around her being, oh yeah, you betcha. And her too. I mean, it's just amazing. It's wonderful. So would I put this piece of my new Blu-ray in someone's hands? Well, it's my new Blu-ray. But would I give it to somebody and say, hey, watch this. You'll enjoy it. Absolutely. Yeah, there's some things that are a little gnarly. Read here, wood chipper. But it's a fantastic movie. So that's our physical media of the episode. So that's going to be it for today's conversation. Show notes are available at abaddonplanet.com/139, episode 139. Thank you so much to Francis Sue for sharing their time and expertise. Thanks to Matt Mifflin for the music in this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a colleague. It really helps more folks find these conversations. You can also reach out with ideas, questions, or opportunities, and like I said before, feedback by sending me a note to joel@abaddonplanet.com or join the email list to stay connected and keep the conversation going. Thanks again for spending time on Abaddon Planet. Good talk, real learning, better teaching. Peace.